Good morning. I'd like to speak about a subject that's really close to my heart. I'm making myself very vulnerable, and God told me that He wanted me to share my story in the hope that it would bring inspiration to other mums. For those of you that have experienced the pain of having a child removed, you'll know that there's nothing that fills the hole and the gap in your life of your child. It's a deep, gut-wrenching, heartbreaking feeling. As mothers, we carry our child during the pregnancy. We have amazing plans for our child. And let's face it, we live in a fallen world with a broken system. I'll take you back to my childhood because then you'll have a deeper understanding of the situation. I was raised by my nan and granddad until the age of 13. Unfortunately, I had really bad mental health as a result of all the trauma that I had suffered as a child. So my nan and granddad found it really difficult to cope with me and manage my emotions. At that point, they decided that they would put me into the care system. I went into a few foster homes and then had to go into a children's home because my behaviour was so bad. Everybody saw me as a naughty child, but I was a child that was very traumatised by my early experiences in life. I went on to have 3 children. My first child, the situation was that it wasn't a great situation. I was partying a lot, and instead of being a mother, I was very distracted by domestic violence, mental health, and wanting to still be a party girl. I was only 19, I was very young, and her father went to prison. My second child, I was married to the dad. However, that didn't turn out the way I'd expected or hoped it would. And with my third child, my mental health significantly got the better of me. I then found out I was pregnant with my 4th child when I was at an appointment to have the implant put in. I had no idea that I was pregnant, and when they told me the news, they done like a routine pregnancy check because they just wanted to see if there was any possibility. When they came back with the news, I completely broke. I fell to the floor in tears because I knew what I was up against and the challenges that I faced from day one. I rang the local authority and I explained that I knew I had a past and I knew that there would be concerns because of my past. However, I was willing to do absolutely anything and everything. I just wanted to work openly, honestly and transparently with the local authority so that I could be in the best possible place to keep my child. I was told by the manager of the local authority that as I wasn't 3 months pregnant, the child that I was carrying was just a fetus and to go away, and that they would contact me in due time. This caused significant anxiety for me. I was pregnant and I wanted the help and support from the local authority, but they chose to have alternative motives. Throughout that pregnancy, it was a horrendous pregnancy. I was sick every day. I had social services knocking at my door, causing me and my baby stress every single day. I had meetings where I would want to plan for the future of my child, and they would tell me that they were going to do everything they possibly could to make my life difficult, in more words than so. Then I would attend the scans and hear my baby's heart beat, and instead of being able to enjoy and embrace that like many mothers could, it was really traumatic for me because I didn't know the outcome of what would happen when my child was born. I decided to do a lot of research during my pregnancy, and the more research I did, the more I realised what a corrupt system and world we lived in. During my pregnancy, I struggled with gastral diabetes, pelvic girdle pain, and was hospitalised because the pain was so severe. Eventually, I ended up going into early labour, which was really dangerous for me because as a mother who had already had 3 C-sections, it was very dangerous that I was going into labour because I wouldn't have been able to manage the labour. So I was rushed into hospital early hours in the morning, and I remember asking the doctor when they were planning to do the C-section. I remember the shock and horror when I was told that I was going to be having a C-section that day. During the C-section, there were many complications, and they couldn't get the spinal needle in. I had severe, sharp shooting stabbing pains going through my legs, my back, and my bottom. I remember at one point I took away my gas mask because I was on gas and air because I was in so much pain. And I said to my friend at the time to call the father of the child because I didn't think that I was going to make it. Because the C-section was so horrific, my son was placed into intensive care because he had swallowed some amino acids during the C-section. The local authority chose to lie and say that my son had been affected by the fact that I used to smoke cannabis. This was not true, and I have evidence from the paediatric hospital team to state that. So my son spent, I think it was 2 days in intensive care. He was very tiny, and I prayed that God would restore his body and give him strength. After 2 days, my son went to visit me and his dad on the ward. When my son came to the ward, the social services came out to visit us. The first time they came, they saw that everything was good and that me and the father were bonding with the baby, and it was really great. They said that they would send an email to state that they were aware that we were bonding with the baby and that there was no current issues. The second day, the social worker comes back and she hands me a letter. When I read the letter, it broke me. The letter said that they were going for separation. So I'm in hospital with my beautiful brand new baby. I'd already gone through such a horrific pregnancy and birth, and this just broke me. Me and the baby's father had to attend a video link at court and attend a court hearing from the hospital bed with my son. During that time, the security in the hospital were walking in and out of the room, and it just so happened that my mental health nurse had come to visit me at that time. She asked the security to give me and my child's father some space because, you know, it was a very private, traumatic, emotional, stressful time, and we just needed space. With that, the hospital said that they were happy to keep my child, but I would have to leave the hospital, bearing in mind that I had just had a really horrific C-section and I wasn't fully recovered. I kissed my baby on the forehead and I passed my child over to my mental health nurse. Security decided, even though me and the father weren't causing any trouble, decided to march us out of the hospital. And I had to do a walk of shame in front of all the other mothers who got to keep their beautiful babies. And as we walked out of the hospital, the social worker walked in and laughed at me. I was in so much brokenness and devastation and heartbreak. My breasts were still leaking with milk that I needed to feed my baby with. However, I didn't have my baby because he was with strangers in the hospital. After the second day, there was another court case and we had contact with my child. I remember going to feed my baby and the social worker said to me that I wasn't breastfeeding correctly. Now, I'd already spent a couple of days in hospital bonding with my baby, so the nurses in the hospital remembered me And I asked them, because at first the social worker said that my baby wasn't hungry. And as you know, if any of you are mothers, you know when your child's hungry. So I asked, so I picked my child up to feed him, and the social worker then said to me, "You're not feeding your baby properly. It's not the right position." So I asked the nurse in front of the social worker if I was actually feeding my baby correctly, and the nurse confirmed I was. Next, we went to a court case, and we were granted by the judge to go to a family assessment placement, which on the website had all these amazing services. And I thought, thank God, my prayers have been answered. I'm going to be reunited and given a chance to be a family. I was over the moon at this point. I was so excited. We got to the placement in London, and we were told by the other families within the assessment centre to look at the Ofsted reports regarding the placement. Bearing in mind, at this point, I'm desperate to keep my family together. I would have done absolutely anything to work with professionals and to have the help and support that my family so desperately needed. When we looked at the Ofsted reports for the placement, we found out that Ofsted had concerns regarding this placement for the past couple of years. The outcome of their Ofsted reports was inadequate, not good enough, and we were really concerned by this. At this point, I spoke to my solicitor, and because I spoke to my solicitor, that caused problems, because when I told my solicitor that the placement had none of the services that it said it did on the website, obviously that really upset the manager of the placement. Myself and my child's father were set up to fail from day one. That was very obvious. There was a court case whilst myself and the child's father were at the placement, and my placement was terminated during the middle of the court case by the manager because the judge asked me why I felt the placement wasn't working out. When I was honest with the judge and told the judge the reasons why I felt the placement wasn't working out, my placement was terminated and I was sent home away from my son. My child's father stayed in the placement for another couple of weeks, but as you can imagine, the placement made it completely impossible for my child's father to bond and care for the baby. So then my child went into foster. I'd also like to add, because I wasn't able to rest after the C-section and all the emotional distress I was going through, when I got to London, I started to bleed and hemorrhage really heavy with massive blood clots. I was taken to a hospital on my own and told that the father of the child wasn't allowed to come with me because they refused to care for the child. So I was on my own in the middle of a hospital with no one around me, passing out with massive blood clots. I was scared. And I remember looking at the monitor to see that my heart rate was 120. So then my child went into foster care. I remember having to go to contact centres, and I remember the heartbreak of when it was time to leave contact. For mothers that know that heartbreak, you'll know that there is nothing that takes away that pain. Imagine seeing your baby and having the most greatest time possible ever, and then having to leave your baby in a centre and have someone walk out with your baby. There is nothing like that pain. Now, I do understand that the local authority need to safeguard children if it's unsafe for the child to be with the maternal parents, the biological parents. However, what we are seeing in today's society, and have been for a very long time, is forced adoption. Social services have target numbers that they need to meet in order to be paid. There are target adoption rates that social services need to make. It gives them a pay rise, and it's pretty sick. Now, social services don't have the resources or the funding to be able to help vulnerable families. So, because of this, they will often take children away instead of giving the support that the family desperately need. Also, when families are put through the assessment process and the court process, it's a 26-week process. Now, the families will do absolutely everything they possibly can to make sure that they make the progress and that they work with professionals. And I hate to tell you, but from somebody who's lived through that experience themselves, they will say even if you do everything that you possibly can to make positive changes for your children, like I did, I done every single course there was. The local authority will then say, we have not seen your progress that you've made for a significant period of time, because social services are looking for a period of sustained changes and progress for 2 years. But the court case is over and done with in 26 weeks. That's something the courts won't tell you. Social services won't tell you. They are setting vulnerable families up to fail. And there is a black market for babies. Every time a child is adopted, the local authority make money. Now, this is something that has been close on my heart for a very long time. But families are silenced, and there's been many mothers and fathers that have faced court prosecution for speaking about their experiences. Now, we all know that we live in a fallen world, and we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against rulers of principalities and authorities. It is very convenient that the local authority are the ones that are taking away vulnerable children from vulnerable families. And when them children are older, they are left with identity crises, mental health challenges, and a lack of love because they haven't been able to bond with their biological parents. It took me a long time to be able to get the strength to come on here and speak about my story. God asked me to speak about my story because he wanted me to speak the truth. There's a lot of parents that don't know what's going on, and it's not fair. It damages and ruins lives. It causes psychological trauma, not only for the child, but also for the family. Have had to experience the pain of having a child removed. We need to gather together as mums, because there is strength in numbers. You are not on your own, and you will be able to pull through this. There is light at the end of the tunnel, I promise you. Please don't go down the alternative routes of trying to deal with this on your own or finding unhealthy ways to cope, because there is support there. And I want any mum that's watching this that has had to endure the excruciating, heartbreaking pain of having a child removed to know that they are valued, they are loved, and there is a way out of this pain. I've been there. I'm still there. But I know that when I keep my eyes on God, you have to keep your eyes on whatever it is that brings you faith. For me, it was experiencing the love of God. I'd never experienced agape love before in my life. Agape love is only the love that Christ can give you. There is nothing like it. God's love transforms brokenness into blessings. God's love transforms lives and saves lives. And when you experience the love of God, you will never be the same. And that's why I've come on here today, to share my story with you, because I believe that there's not enough of us that are able to share their story. I wanted to share my story to represent all the mothers that have had to endure this pain of forced adoption or having a child removed. I am working hard to make a change. Together we are strong. Together we can make a difference in the world. I remember during my pregnancy, I got my son's bedroom all ready, made it all lovely, put lovely toys and books and made it so beautiful for him to come home. And I remember the pain I felt coming back from the hospital that day without my baby. I couldn't even go in that room because it just reminded me that my baby never got to come home. And now I want to be a blessing to other people. I want to be the voice of the unheard and be a light in people's darkness. I want people to know that there is a way forwards. For me, as I've just said, that way was finding the love of God. And I just pray for anyone watching this video that they will find whatever it is that brings them faith. Because you are a person, you are entitled to have a productive life. You are entitled to be happy. Many of us feel that we're not able to be happy. I am the phone line manager for a charity called Match Mothers. We support mothers who have had children removed. Now, Match Mothers is amazing because every single one of our amazing, cool handlers have unfortunately had to go through the heartbreaking experience of having their child removed. Match Mothers is an organisation that provides services, support and resources for mothers that need help and support. Match Mothers is an organisation that not only provides support for us mums that have lost our children, but also gives us hope, inspiration, and helps us to build a life after all the pain. During my pregnancy, God gave me a vision for my son's name. I won't share my son's name, but I will share the biblical meaning of my son's name. So his first name means to rejoice in the Lord, and the second name means laughter. The reason why I called my son his name was because I knew and had faith that one day, despite the circumstances I was in, God was going to restore my family and we would rejoice together as a family and we would laugh and praise the Lord for all he had carried us through. So the judge ordered a placement order 2 years ago. Since then, myself and my child's father have done absolutely everything we possibly could to ensure that we've worked with the local authority and other professionals to make consistent changes in our life for our child. We have such an amazing bond and attachment with our child, and it truly breaks our heart every time we have to leave him. My son has suffered significant emotional distress and psychological trauma by early separation. There is so much research out there that highlights the traumatic struggles that early separation causes children. However, this is often overlooked. And just like in my case, the local authority are trying to say that my son suffers from neurodiverse issues. However, that is not the case. My son has been ripped apart from his mother and father who love him. And that is what's caused my son the emotional distress, which is what is being displayed within his behaviour. Now, I won't be silenced because, unfortunately for the local authority, I do know that what they are doing is wrong, and I will do everything I possibly can to put a stop to that. They have tried to break me so many times, but I will rise up each time because of the grace that God gives me. God has made a way for me when there was no way. Just as God parted the Red Sea, God has made my life go from brokenness to blessings. So the placement order was granted over 2 years ago, and I've recently got married to my child's father on the 23rd of December. It was such an amazing wedding, and all my children were there together for the very first time, and I'm so grateful to God because the glory of God was so wonderful. My friends, my family and my children were all together, and it meant the world to me. Put in to revoke the placement order, and the local authority didn't tell me themselves. I had to find out from the position statement that my child is now potentially going to be going for adoption. The local authority have found a potential family for my son to go with. They didn't tell me themselves because often they're very sneaky and they don't want you to really know what's going on. They'd rather do things behind the scene, which is really detrimental to not just the child but also the family. So I have my court case on Monday, and I'm just praying that God will make a way. I have faith that God will make a way. I know that God is a God of the impossible. God turns what the devil meant to harm me with, turns it around for goodness. And I just want to share a scripture for you that I'm standing on for this court case. Deuteronomy, sorry I can't say the word properly, 28, 6-10. Blessed shall you be when you come in, and blessed shall you be when you go out. The Lord will cause your enemies who rise against you to be defeated before you. They shall come out against you one way and flee before you 7 ways. So I do have faith. I know I serve a big God. I know God has many amazing, wonderful plans for me to have a future and a purpose. And I know I am a child of God. And because I am a child of God, I can come to my Father boldly and ask God to turn this around. So I hope this video has brought you some inspiration. I hope this video has shown you that there is light at the end of the tunnel. I don't know what's going to happen on Monday, but one thing I do know is that I serve a God of the impossible. My Father loves me, and I have faith that He will reunite our family. Thank you for watching and being a part of my story.